Good evening, it's George Lees again, and I'm continuing with the theme of religion and genocide in the same breath. Yeah, and the culling of the pagans, and all of it is done in ever such a sly way. 8 million people killed in the 30-year war. They had to be killed in those days by hand. Yeah, that's the burning of the witches, the burning of the pagans, and all of the slaughter. The gun was barely invented until the later aspects of this, and when it is, the death toll rises alarmingly, and they sweep into the South Pacific and all those other countries that we've told you about, and the indigenous peoples, the Indians, the natives on the beaches in the South Pacific, all of them get it in the neck. Okay, I'm not going to take too long on this because there's a lot of ground to cover, and I'm hoping that you will be shocked by it because it's the furthest thing from civilized behavior you could expect. Okay, so that was the theme from The Mission. That film is very, very difficult to see now for free. There's the Christian cross in South America flying over the waterfalls, the fault lines that reflect the aberrant human behaviours in those places. Okay, and the music is, as always, is inspiring, and the man with the sword becomes the man with the Christian cross, the Christian Eucharist. The sacrifices that are made by the natives are massive. Yeah, they know no better. They've been planted in that place by God, and they get everything that the white man imposes on them, and it means that they lose the rights to everything that was in their native land. And the mockery that is the Christian beliefs is just amazing. I've told you how that sparked several earthquakes in Naples alone. Yet all of the seismic activity all up and down the Andes region, it all reflects the brutalization of Latin America by the Christian nations, and all of that is the Hispanic nations that later get brutalized themselves by the much more sophisticated English speaking white man. Yet because their weaponry is better, and because most of them emanate out of the European countries that were engaged in the 30 Years' War that is going to be the focus of much of this video. And let me just take you into the other people that were surprising to me as being involved in that. That's the Swedish nation. I've always associated them with peaceful activities, with objective research, and the activities of the people like the statistician that I talked about, who talks about socio-economic welfare and the birth rate changing for the participant countries. That is Hans Rosling. Yeah, he's a Swede. He's dropped out of my communication lists for fear of revelation, and he's part of that Clinton empire. And today, in all of the British press, Pope Francis is demonising human behaviours and telling us that that is going to cause an ecological catastrophe, when what you get is the acts of God when people like him, as a genocidal person from Latin America where that movie was made. Yeah, it is absolutely tragic that someone who's supposed to be God's representative on the Catholic earth is prepared to tell lies like that. He will get what is coming to him. I have no doubt at all about that. Okay, right then, so let me just play you some more music, and this time it's on the Swedish angle, because ABBA are at the epicenter of every fraud, because ABBA is part of the Christianity fraud and the Piso family ID, and it's also intimately intertwined with the words of the Lord's Prayer. Okay, all of it a fake. And so we've heard Morricone's output. This is the Swedish slant on the mysterious arrival of soldiers in your region. that ABBA choose in that song to portray the sins and massive war crimes of NATO's armies in the current day, when they are long dissociated from activities like that, and they become a haven for all sorts of people that are sent in diasporas out of those brutalised countries. Yet the Scandinavian nations, since I was born into the world, have got a particularly good reputation for being the hosts to the people that are dispossessed of their own countries. Okay, right then, and I think that's enough of the music. Not sure what else I had lined up. Oh, and this is where we started with. Because what we have now in the whole of the globalised world is a mafia operation, and I'm very sorry that I forgot to put the word mafia in the title for the timelines on Christianity and the banking frauds and the military genocides and all of the things that happen in the missions and the anti-pagan movements, yeah, and the burning of the witches. It is absolutely ruthless. Right then, let's just get on with naming some names. Some of them I hope you will be shocked by. My wife used to accuse me of behaving like a man called Robert Maxwell. I did not ever understand the accusation, but clearly, because my wife works in the intel context, and in the last 2 days you've heard several people discussing the issues of wives of world leaders and wives of ordinary low-life people, yeah, like in the Jean Brodie movie, and whether or not someone in those fascist nightmares that she has is involved as an agent, yeah, and she plants those thoughts into the youngsters that are around her, and 2 of those youngsters die in conflict on opposite sides from the same family. The whole of the manipulation of the minds is totally twisted, and as I said this morning, Sonia Poulton, with the people that are pretending to be fighting the Queen yeah, and protecting us from Nick Clegg and all of the people, Danny Alexander, yet she says she would lop the head off the Queen. Yeah, I've approached her to make videos with me and to join me in discussion. Yeah, all she can do is trivialise things and talk about sexual insults. Yeah, and what they've been saying this morning is that Maxwell is part of the paedophilia empire and all of the rest of it. It's a cover for the twisted European history. Yeah, and Robert Maxwell, the real one that was in Oxford and was disappeared off the back of the boat, he's alleged to have lived in Czechoslovakia with the nuclear weapons traders and all of that stuff they talk about, but all of the genocides that lead to world ownership they dare not talk about now, and all they do is spend all of their time trivially covering up the killings like this one. That's the Christmas tree decorated with dead bodies, and those are pagans hanging on a rope. Les grandes misères de la guerre, the great miseries of war, by Jacques Caillot, 1632. Okay, so it says there, that is the residual pagans or anti-Catholics or anti-Arians, Protestants or Picts or Romans hanging from the Christmas tree, because everybody, once Christianity is launched, is driven into division about what the Christianity message is, and all of it on every side and in every denomination is a fraud. And what you've got here is the Aryan movement that wrote it beginning to do a Sonia Poulton in attacking themselves. Do you see that? That's the anti-Aryan movement. It's on my religious timeline, and that is the one that caused the massive winds and trees to fall over a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, this is relatively minor, but it is 30 years long. Okay, let me take you into the jokes and the cover-ups about names that you will recognise. Okay, so the results of the 30 Years' War, which was fought between 1618, yeah, always within 100 to 70 years of the other conflicts, okay, and that's 200 years before, in this case, the Waterloo triumph, and that is another one of the ABBA jokes. Okay, so 1618 to 1648, you have the result of it is the Peace of Westphalia, yeah, decline of Denmark's status as Northern Europe's strongest military power, Danish hegemony, yeah, and what you've got is that all of the denominations that are fighting in this are fighting in the belief that they are fighting for the one true God, which is now not a God at all. It's a human that they have made up and they have faked up in the writings. It's like the pinball game. Everywhere you see the word pi, it is just a massive fraud, because that is the authors, the Pisos, that wrote the stories. Okay, so as a result, you get rid of the Danish hegemony. I'm not sure what that means, but it is the Danish were the bosses and the warlords before, and their power over northern Germany was lost in these conflicts. Okay, and I believe that the Germans were fighting on behalf of the Protestant movement, but we'll see that further down. Okay, the Habsburg supremacy was curtailed. The Dutch Republic, recognition of the independence now of the Orange movement, so the Protestantism is beginning to take over. And remember that Churchill's relatives were fighting in battles, yeah, in the battles at Blenheim were over the Orange Wars and the Dutch William and Mary monarchs, and eventually they took over the British regimes. Okay, and that's the Dutch win favour over the Spanish Empire, and then you've got recognition of the southern Netherlands and Luxembourg by the Dutch Republic, the rise of France as Europe's strongest nation, and the Bourbon dynasty. And in the timeline that we were talking about in Naples, yeah, we could see that Spain and France and the Bourbons and the Habsburgs are in charge of distant places, even in Italy, with the alleged might of Rome. And what you've got in the 30 Years' War is the Swedish Empire rises up 200 years exactly before the Waterloo triumph, yeah, which is not for Sweden. That is a triumph for the Rothschild family, which by now are in charge of Italy, yeah, in Naples, of Vienna, that's Austria, in France, yeah, the most powerful nation now, yeah, and also in London, and there's one more, so that is in Germany, Frankfurt, yeah, where they started from. Okay, so it's a massive set, it's a massive cull, 8 million declared dead, and you get very little truth statistically from this. So let's have a look at the combatants and what they call the belligerents in this. And there's a substantial decline in the power and influence of the Catholic Church, a devastating and major population loss in German states, and what you've got in the Braveheart movie, in the Gladiator movie, when the Germans refuse to give up the ghost and they acknowledge that they're prepared to fight, and they cut the head off the negotiator. The Gladiator character says to his second in command, you know, they do not know when they are conquered, and the Gladiator whispers to his second in command, would you, Quintus, would you? Yeah, and all of it is a divide and conquer tool by all of the world leaders to get all of their troops and all of their ordinary people out of the way. Yeah, total tyranny in every one of the participant countries. Okay, and the belligerents on the Protestant side were Sweden from 1630, France from 1635, Denmark 1625 to 1629. Bohemia, that's Czechoslovakia and the surrounding countries, that's the Bohemian Rhapsody. The United Provinces, Saxony, Electoral Palatinate, Brandenburg, Prussia. And this is where many of the British royal families come from under contenders. Brunswick, Lunenburg, England, yeah, with the English cross of St George on it, yeah, and Scotland, yeah, and that is where Robert Maxwell comes from for real. We'll see it a little bit further down. Transylvania also in the team. Red, blue, and in this case yellow. Okay, Romanian and Hungarian, that's the Rothschild heartland in Cappadocia, east of the Black Sea, where the vampires come from. Ottoman Empire, that's another place that can be demonized by the Church of Rome, because the Pisos launched them and they launched the Ottoman Empire too. That's Islam, the half moon. Yeah, so you've got butchery across the whole of the world that was known at that time, and all of it is for the same Christianity movement. All of the pagans get burnt in the bonfires, and the Russian Tsardom is also in favour of the Protestant movement. Okay? Because they're just to the east, that's Kievan Rus, yeah, and they're just to the east of where the last pagans were prepared to make a stand. Yep, that's Kievan, and we've told you that story before. Commanders and leaders. So let's have a look at the Catholic nations. Yeah, this is the Church of Rome, launched also by the Pisos, like the Protestant offshoots, and all of it is for hatred and sectarian division. Okay, so the Habsburg states and allies are Catholic, the Holy Roman Empire, the Catholic League, Austria, Bohemia, after 1620, so they changed sides like Italy itself did in World War II. Okay, Spanish Empire, Hungary, yeah, that's the Hungarian nation, that is where the blue Danube flows, and we've told you all about the Essen region and the writings of the Essenite Bible texts. Okay, the Kingdom of Croatia, and the genocides that occur in these places are amazing. I thought Poland is on it. Yeah, all of the death camps in Poland, all of that driven by Nazis, Germans, yeah, and the Jewish hatred is just part of the art, because the Rothschilds themselves opted to be Jews. They run the cults for profit, and they only let the elite Jews survive the great conflicts and the genocides. Okay, and we've got here in this case genocides in all of the locations, time and time again, and the Maxwell and Cox cover for that in popular culture. Yeah, the stories that M and Gordon Bowden and Peter Eyre tell about that, they could well be real, because there is tier after tier of munitions profiteering. Yeah, and all of the inquests and all of the weapons delegations across all of world history are totally twisted, and the lies are told openly on the front page of the papers, and it is really tragic. Okay, and you've got the Russian Tsardom, and remember that they are interlocked now with Hearts Football Club through Romanov, and interlocked with the Rothschilds through the same Romanov fraudsters that asset stripped Scotland, and have asset stripped also all of those Eastern European countries, including the Ukraine and including Lithuania, where the central bank is run by the former Russian Rosneft experts. Okay, and the regulation of Hearts' crashing is done by the central bank in Lithuania, where Romanov is the boss, and all of it is totally lawless. Okay, so the commanders are people like Adolphus in the Swedish team, which in this conflict are probably the most lethal of all. And you've got Albrechts, who are part of the Third Reich too, on the other side, on the Catholic side. And you've got Ottavios, Piccolomini, yeah, so you've got the P word and the Pisos fighting on both sides, which is why I've used the yellow coloration, because all of the leaders are in the same fascist team, and all of them get funded by the Rothschilds in every conflict. And the other banking magnates, like the Barings and the Metternichs, are all mentioned in the film that was made about the Rothschild family, and how fragile they are in wartime and in peacetime, but how sly they are in cheating everyone from the tax man to the person who's in charge of the war contracts. Okay, right then. So let's just look at James Spence. This is the Scottish people. This is the Leslies from the Hamilton region. They're legends. Yeah, they're also in the Braveheart movie, and the Murrays are all over this story. That's the Murrags. Yeah, they're in it. They've got the word rat in their name, which is part of the Aryan dream and the Aryan myths and the stories about the Pied Piper of Camelon. Okay, it is just a total piss take. And there you've got the Hamilton link confirmed, this time under the English flag, James, 3rd Marquis of Hamilton. And remember, I'm going to tell you about Admiral Nelson, Horatio Nelson, and his love affairs and his desertion of contracts in wartime that lead to massive treason and massive breaches of trust. Yeah, and that is launched out of Naples, where the Bible was defrauded and written. You've got kings and queens and cardinals from the Roman Church fighting in the French case on behalf of the Protestants. And Cardinal Richelieu is, I'm led to believe, his name before he becomes a cardinal, like Pope Francis's was Gorgioli or Gorgigolo or something. Cardinal Richelieu's real name is Duplessis. Yeah, and that is the Duplessis linkage that takes you into British American Tobacco and the Republic of South Africa and Lord Boateng's interests. Okay, Henry, Prince of Condé, Archduke Leopold Wilhelm of Austria, that could be Mozart's boss. Yeah, Philip III of Spain, Philip IV of Spain, Count the Duke of Olivares, Gonzalo Fernandez. Can you hear the drums, Fernando? And he's from Cordoba, I think that's Spain. Yeah, all of them are melted into the massive genocides. There's another Scotsman, Audrey Hepburn, launched to cover him. And there's a Catherine Hepburn, Frederick V, Elector Palatine, Gendrix Matthias Turn. That's the Turn and Taxis, which is why I've coloured it yellow, because they're fascists. Whichever side they're on, they're leaders of men, and they lead men to their deaths. Christian I of Anhalt-Bernburg, Christian IV of Denmark, Robert Maxwell, 1st Earl of Nithsdale, right across in the Cumbria region, where blind King George was murdered by the British royals so that they could stay kings and queens despite their illegitimacy and their being the children of Queen Victoria. Her only legitimate child was sired by blind Prince George of Cumbria. Yeah, right next door to where Robert Maxwell, centuries before, was already a murderous villain on behalf of the Protestant movement, okay, which is the Church of England and the Church of Scotland. Okay, Johann George I of Saxony, that's a Georg. Maurice of Nassau, William of Nassau, Frederick Hendrik of Orange, Martin Trump, Ernst Casimirs, James the 6th and 1st of Scotland. There's how we recruit the armies. England and Scotland, the only king to unite those two nations. I'm going to get my forbidden fruit. Duke of Buckingham, Sir Horace Vere, Gabriel Bethlen. This is still on the Protestant side of the fence. Christian of Brunswick. Okay, strength. 149,000 Swedes, 135,000 Danes, 77,000 Dutch, approximately 100 to 150,000 Germans, 150,000 French, 40,000 Bohemian estates, 30,000 Hungarians, 6,000 Transylvanians, 60,000 Ottoman cavalry as support to Frederick V, Elector Palatine. So this is Christian. This is Christian, and it is one of the biggest genocides that ever occurred in hand-to-hand combat. I think it must be the biggest, with the possible exception of what the Hispanics did in Latin America. Total slaughter, which is why I played you the music from the mission, and why it's very, very difficult to get the mission unless you're prepared to pay for it on the telly now. It is all about the ruthless killing of all of the natives all through the jungle, and what's happened to that ever since. You get the defoliation, you get all of the things that we talk about in the despoiling of those countries, and all of a sudden it becomes the rearing ground in prairies for McDonald's and Detweilers, funding base. Yeah, it is a tragedy, and the list on the Catholic side is not so, but the Catholic side includes 300,000 Spanish soldiers from the Spanish Netherlands and Italy, 100 to 200,000 Germans. Yeah, so you've got 150,000 Germans on one side and 200,000 on the Catholic side, and you've got Hungarian and Croatian cavalry. It's just amazing. And in the smallest type of all, casualties and losses, 8 million, including civilian casualties. Goodness knows who keeps the statistics and whether or not such a thing is even vaguely possible then. Okay, so it's a massive cull, and do you see the magnitude of the names that are involved in that? I would like to show you a little bit about the viceroys as well. Let me do that now, and then we'll go back to the timeline and I'll take you further into the Christian Naples frauds and what Vesuvius does to show us when these things are happening. So look up the 30 Years' War. I dare not look at what happened in the 100 Years' War. Scares me shitless. And remember that every one of the combatants in those massive battles and the massive culls and the culling of the pagans and the ordinary civilians around them, yeah, it is done in the name of the one true God, who's not a God at all. He's the fictitious Jesus Christ, written by the Piso family. And in the history of Naples, they're right back in the text. I can't remember how many millennia back before Christ, the man that was in the Argonauts that discovered Naples, yeah, his name contains the word Piso as part of his anagram. It's sick. So these are the viceroys of Naples. Okay, and this is the Aragons, the kings from France that are in the Lord of the Rings movie, to come back to the rightful kingdom and take the ownership of it. Do you see it? And you've got Gonzalez's, Fernandez, yeah, and all of that writes the lyrics for the ABBA tunes, and the drums and the lyrics of them always take you into all of the places that Christianity go. Okay? And here you've got the Che Guevara jokes about the socialist, revolutionary fascist Che Guevara and the American peso currency links. Okay? This is Chile, this is Bolivia, yeah, and it's all of the Latin American revolutions. And I've coloured him in yellow as well, because he's like the union leaders, yeah, and the Castros that we'll see further down. Okay, Hugo of Moncada, Viceroy of Sicily, Ferdinand II of Aragon, Philibert of Chalon, Pompeo Colonna, Charles I of Spain, Luis Alvarez de Toledo, and Osorio, Luis Alvarez de Toledo y Osorio. That takes you into the fucking Lloyd's toxic debt pool, and that is the Osorio boss who earns £9 million a year. That was back in 2010. Goodness knows what he gets now. Look at the grin on his face. He's running one of the biggest toxic debt pools at Lloyd's that the world has ever known. Yeah, and all of it is extended to toxic debt because he keeps giving money to his friends that are super rich, and he keeps taking the money away from democracies, and that is done through the central bankers like Mark Carney, who start off like him in the minor merchant banks. And all of the cabal of the HSBC, the Santander movement and the New World Order banks are totally twisted. They've got massive shareholdings as well, and it is a blight on the global civilization concept, and it would be ever so easy to fix if cowardly cheats like him were banged up in prison for the rest of their days. And what his mission in life at Lloyd's is to get rid of all the solvent organisations like the Co-op, which they've now done, and that's the Lloyd's Verdi project, and it's all over my website. None of it gets regulated by the people that are paid to regulate it. They're profiteers like Margaret Hodge, Nate Oppenheimer, yeah, and Lord Thurzo, and little Justin Quisling Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, on the Banking Committee for Parliamentary Standards, and he is a criminal in the money lender sector for the homeless, because he only charges 25 to 80% when Wonga charge 4,000%. Yeah, so that's the Osorio joke. He was the Viceroy in Naples, one of his relatives, in May 1553. And that could be May Day. He might be a revolutionary, because the places in Naples are still called fucking communes. Right then, Inigo Lopez de Sopeter, and you've got the knights that say ni in everything that you see. Yeah, and you've got Enrique de Guzman. I'm not sure where I've heard of Guzman. Maybe in the Muppets characters. Fernando Ruiz de Castro, Andrade y Portugal, Viceroy under King Philip III of Spain. And that's the launch of Castro with the British American tobacco to show his might and that he's part of the team, from Cuba, where the central bank was one of the last to go, because he's particularly good at keeping his assets, like Gaddafi and Hussein was, yet before they get topped, if they did indeed get topped. And that is part of the Godfather movie, because they go out to Cuba to visit Hyman Roth. Yeah, and it's all for them a massive joke. And that logo, Castrol, was all over the town and the filling stations when I was a boy in the 1960s. And this scam is as old as, it's 450 years old. And you've got another man with the word pie in his name, Jan Oloso Pimentel de Herrera, 5th Duke of Benavent. That's the Ben, the stuff about the tribes from Israel, and the Prime Minister, the Benjamin Netanyahu, and the stories about Bill and Ben, all of it with the Zionist context. Okay? This one's in charge at Valencia, which is also in the El Cid piss take. That's the one at Valencia, I think, on the beach, with the golfers marching in the Moorish armies with the golf clubs over their shoulders, looking really threatening, just like all of the news that you see about the beheadings that are made by sad bastards like him and by Michael Grade and the massive virtual TV news empires. Then we get the Borgias, and that's the same actor that was in the Mission film in Latin America, yeah, with the crucifix going over the fault lines, the fall lines that God created because of these human behaviours and the massive lies that they tell. And then there's the zap button issue, yeah, and this is an inquisitor. This is Antonio Zapata y Cisneros, also listed as Zapata y Mendoza, Madrid, 8th October 1550 to 1635, was a Spanish bishop. He served as Bishop of Cadiz and Pamplona, where they run the Bull Run issue, Archbishop of Burgos, where El Cid came from. Yeah. Cardinal Council of State for Philip III, Viceroy of Naples, and Inquisitor General. That's the massive culls of the Christian Inquisitions. Everybody on all sides, even the people that were prepared to litigate and try and defend their colleagues in the church, they would get it in the neck. That's in the Sean Connery movie about the abbey in northern Italy, and all of the people in it are depicted as deformed and retarded, and Sean Connery is in it as a laugh that he is a tax exile, and he's untouchable in the Justice movie that was made about Chicago. Yeah, it is absolutely sick. Yeah, and to search for heroes anywhere in Britain or Scottish history is futile. Antonio Alvarez de Toledo, 5th Duke of Alba, Knight of the Order of the Golden Fleece. Yeah, that's the Argonaut film, and all of the jokes that you get about all of the advice being given by the gods in the skies, and the human greed is that they want other people's possessions regardless of the right of access. And the woman that they pluck from the sea in the Golden Fleece movie is called, for a laugh, MEDEA. And she joins their side. That's the world's medias. And then you've got the El Niño Núñez de Guzman, okay, Viceroy under King Philip IV, and this is 1637 to 1644 that this man was in power. Magellan died in 1521. That's the El Niño joke, and it's still running way after, hundreds of years after Magellan was killed on the beach in the Battle of Mactan in the Philippines. Okay? And so you've got the Ninian joke in Scotland. That's the conversion of people. That's the monasteries that St Ninian created on the west coast. Ninho, where Cumbria is, where the valley is, where Robert fucking Maxwell comes from, and the murdered blind King George used to live. And nobody who lives in Cumbria knows anything about that, even the people that work for G4S, or are too scared to declare it. Jan Alfonso, the bad king in the El Cid movie, killed his own brother to take the throne. Yeah, and you've got the name of El Cid in the movie is Rodrigo de Bivar, and there he is, Rodrigo de Bivar, strapped to his hippos. And here you've got the piss take that this is a Rodrigo of Lyon. Yeah, I think that's also in Spain, or it could be on the east coast of France, like Lyon. I think that's the Spanish equivalent. His name, this joke, is Rodrigo Ponce de Leon, 4th Duke of Arcos El Cid, Viceroy of Valencia. He's the fat Arab that gets chucked off the wall in the movie. Okay, under his rule, the Neapolitan Republic rebellion by Masanielli broke out. Okay, Inigo Vélez de Guevara. This is the Che Guevara joke again. This one, 1648 to 1653, is head of the Imperial Post Office. So you can open the mail, get all the secrets, and you can be a traitor to your country for a lot of profit. Same as the Yellow Touring and Taxis company. Yeah, you get the secrets in the taxi, then they become the property of the emperor. Right. There's the Osorio name again. Ponce de Leon again. Viceroy of Sicily now. Charles II of Spain, Order of the Holy Spirit, France. Yeah, and they're ever so serious about it. There never was a Holy Spirit. There never was a Jesus Christ. It's just all of the Piso writings. Antonio Pedro, that's Peter, St. Peter joke. Sancho Davila y Osorio, Lloyd's Banking Group, 9 million euros a year. Yeah, and he's got massive business interests, and he's interlocked with many British companies. I can show you that in another video later on if you call for that. Gaspar Mendez de Haro, 7th Marquis of Carpio. That's the DiCaprio joke. Can you see it? And the Harry bit is like my son's name, and that's the Aryan joke again. Luis Francis de la Cerda de Aragon, Juan Manuel Fernandez Pacheco, 8th Marquis of Villena. And he's got a whole load of other day jobs. Viceroy of Navarre, Viceroy of Aragon, Viceroy of Catalonia, Viceroy of Sicily, Viceroy of Naples, Royal Spanish Academy, Knight of the Order of the Golden Fleece. King Viceroy under King Philip of Spain after around 1701. Austrian rule, sorry. So follow the 5 arrows and you will follow the power base for the Naples bosses. Yeah, all of the countries that set up the central banks get a go to run it, and they get their administrators to come there to learn the tricks, yeah, from the fraudster supreme who defrauded the Bible and the Quran. And here you've got, with the launch of the new Austrian regime, you appoint someone called King Joseph the First. That's Joseph in Egypt, Joseph in Bethlehem, and Joseph now in the place where the fucking stories were written. Yeah, he's in Naples as its viceroy, and he's the king, and he's Joseph, and that for them is a huge laugh. Right then, and you've got the Dons, the joke about the Godfathers and the Dons. Emperor Leopold I. Now remember, this is the Austrian regimes, and this could be Mozart's sponsors. Okay, Karl Borromeo, that's the Borromeo joke. Also part of the nations with their dormant leaders and their kings and queens being asleep and greybeards and covered in cobwebs, when these heroes rise up and help to take over their nation and eventually take over the ownership of the whole world. Wolfgang Hannibal, Count of, it's got the word rat in it, Schrattenbach. Okay, and that is another red, white and blue joke, because it's the Gallus chicken. Yeah, here's the Gallus above him, 1719, his immediate predecessor of Hannibal, and Gallus is the chicken joke, chicken and egg jokes. And there was more on that on the Castel Dovo yet the Castle of the Egg, right in the middle of Naples, right next door to the buildings owned by the Rothschilds and the buildings owned by the Viceroy. The Alps and the Heffalumps joke. So Hannibal crossed the Alps with the elephants, and the elephants and the rabbits, like the bunny girls, are the puka joke. And it's launched in Eastern Europe, in the Aegean, but suddenly, with the realization that you can make loads of money by making secret societies that understand jokes like that, it's all of a sudden the Python Society and the Monty Python jokes, and all of that is right across America in the sororities and the fraternities that consume every one of the elite posh universities. And that is the issue that Britney Spears is trying to get you to understand when she sings about Amy, yeah, and she's smelling the Pizzo presence from the pie, which is in Italian the female genitalia. And that's also, it means also in other, it's the foot of the willow joke is also the same joke. Yeah, it's about translation from Latin or Italian or from Hebrew, and all of it becomes a smutty joke that they think are ever so clever, and they brutalise the world using secret societies that share that type of information. Yeah, and that inspires them to do it again and again. And we have cabals all over the world that are running protection rackets because they know all of the indecent secrets of the world leaders, because they're part of the sorority behaviour patterns. Yeah, you saw the royal princes bare naked, yeah, in the lead up to their picking of their partners, when they had to change the laws of succession. Yeah, so that the Prince Charles is no longer eligible, and only Prince William gets the nod if the Queen dies. Okay, right then, we spent enough time on this. I'm going to take you back. Let's see if we've got any more pictures, and we'll just stop on that. I can send anybody that wants it the PDFs on any of these things. So there you've got the combination of Boromir and the Aryan names again, and you can see how close that is to the current Prime Minister of Italy, who's called Renzi. Yeah, and Jeff Rence is the actual freedom fighter and activist in the US that talks all of the time about renewable oil and the massive political scams that these people pull. And he talks a lot to Dean Henderson, that is the honest man from the River Runs Through It region in Washington, west coast of America. Right then, let's get back to the historical timeline for Naples. And we ended on the creation of the opera sector. Okay, the Arias performance of the opera Didone. It's in 1641. Okay, and it's a joke, a lot of jokes rolled into one, because you've got the author or the writer of the music is a man called Busanello, and Aristobus is one of the Piso family members that was involved in the emperors and their bloodlines. Okay, and you've got Francesco Cavalli writes the music, and it's in the Venetian Teatro, or that performance is, and La Dido is the Lady Di joke. And this, because this is about the history of Naples, I'll show you how the Lady Di comes into it further down. Dido is a singer, and she's for rent in her singing career. She's a lovely woman. She's kind of one-hit wonder, and the Dionysius joke is about the goddesses and the gods, and that is Celine Dion, of course. Okay, Celine Dion sings about immortality with the Bee Gees, that's the bee gods, and A Life for Rent is Dido's output, her one hit. Okay, and what you've got is a sad joke about Dido being the queen of Carthage, where the elephants, the pukas without their bullocks hanging down, like the rats and all of the little creatures that the Freemasons in America laugh at as they take the world to war as Bing Crosby's profiteering friends. Okay, and you've got the Aeneas and the Trojan linkages. Yeah, the Trojan horse. Trajan is one of the empire fraudsters in the Roman court. Yeah, and he's desperately in league with the Pisos when they still lived there before the 3rd century, and then they screw off to the Byzantine regions. Some of them go to Scotland, some of them go to Ireland eventually, but we have no way of knowing whether that's true. And the statistics are all Freemasonic numbers and the Piso code to let people see that they're in the story and it is their writings. Okay, so Naples is now one of the largest cities in the Habsburg Empire, and we're up to the year 1654, and we'll keep going down. So the Archbishop's Palace is now expanded. Yeah, this is a religious cleric, and remember that the religious texts tell you that you should not look for money and wealth, but they've got palaces like the king's. 1656, the plague. Yeah, the response from God to the building of the palatial empires for what is a false religion right under God's nose, and God runs Vesuvius on location. Fontenelle Cemetery established 1667. San Gennaro de Poveri, the world's first poorhouse, and that's the January, St. January joke. Nobody knows whether or not he actually lived, but he's the saint and he's called January. Yeah, and this is the world's first poorhouse. There are 10,000 homeless now in one of Italy's biggest cities. What did I say the population was? 450,000, almost 500,000 already. Okay, and this is because they're drawn to Christ's pilgrimage place. Christ is charismatic, and it is a hospitalier's initiative, like the poorhouse in Kelso. Yeah, it's run to separate families, it's run to send them into slavery. The children are sold to the elites in the region, and the rest is history, and it's totally twisted, and all of that stopped in 1914. Okay, so, and you've got all sorts of operas and sick little jokes to the Piro. Yeah, and the Peri is the spinning top that I told you about that we used to get for our Christmas presents. Yeah, it's a Jewish icon for the dreidel. Yeah, and the betting scandals that are the Jewish festivals. Okay, and January is sainted in this story, like Friday is Freya, the Norse gods of beauty and love, and it morphs into the friars that are the people that inhabit the abbeys, and all of the gods' jokes and all of their functionaries and all of their elements get taken into these alter ego names, and that is the knights that say Ni and run this Catholic religion in Scotland. Yeah, and the Arians are clever enough to demonise themselves so that they can have inquisitions against the Arians. And all of it is a tool for genocide. Okay, we're up to 1694. Alessandro Scarlatti's opera Piro, we've done that. The Palace of Capo di Monte. Yeah, and 1707, Naples is now conquered by the Austrians. And then 1730, this is an interesting bit about Diana Spencer, who became Prince Charles's second sexual partner, or the second parent that he had sired a child with. The first was Camilla when she was 18 and he was 17, and this is now the story of the Palazzo Serra di Cassano. That's it, palatial looking building, and later on we'll get inside the building and we'll see the stairwell, and that is the joke about the Capo di Monte. Remember that Vesuvius is the local mountain, and what they want to do is to silence it, to put a capo on it, a cap on the mount. Now the Vulcan story is also the Star Trek joke. Yeah, and it's the beam me up Scotty air balloons jokes that is all over the story. Okay, so see Princess Diana Spencer Library at Althorpe, Northampton. I think that's on the other tabs. The Palazzo is right next door, so what she's got is the massive book collection that came out of Naples. Yeah, and it's now in the library at Manchester University, run by some farmer profiteers that I know and have a long profiteering record. And Manchester is now the second place for the BBC, because they know that the floods in London and the hopeless little barrier that they've got is not enough to protect them from God's anger if they carry on the way that they are doing. And you've got the Babylonian buildings in the middle of the city now. The Palazzo is right next door to the Castel Ovo. That's it. There's the chicken and egg castle out on the end of the St. Peter, the Pierre. Yeah, isn't it funny? And the St. Peter's cock is still locked inside the eggshell. Yeah, that's all of the jokes about the eggs being used at Easter time and rolling away the stone in front of the tomb that Jesus could never have been in, because he never actually lived. Right then, it's on the St. Pierre or Pierre, and explains the Horatio Nelson treason in war, and the Horatio at the bridge joke, and the Casanova sexual route into chaos is ancient history. Okay, they are all in bed together with the global mafias. And there we've got this posh house that has the stairwell that looks as if it's a bridge going over the stairs when you see it from the inside. Yeah, and it's right next door to the castle for the chicken and egg jokes, and the cock crowing 3 times in the Easter religious story about the killing of our greatest faked up hero so that everybody can have their souls saved. And I told you the stories about how Vesuvius erupts when the Catholic leadership team, that is the papacy, yeah, when they change the rules and they make massive declarations that they have the governance and have the might of God on this earth, then Vesuvius blows its top, which is why they would like to have it capped. And that is the Capulets joke, and that is the writings of Shakespeare and the Romeo and Juliet artistic thing, which is continued in 1737 with the launch of the Teatro di San Carlo. And the spire of San Domenico, 1738, they rediscover that the Villa Papyri is actually been buried, and this is the discovery that Pompeii with the Villa Papyri in Herculaneum is under the rubble that was in Vesuvius when they failed to cap it. Okay, and the Palace of Capodimonte was built, and that I think is where Capodimonte porcelain manufactory established in 1743, and then you've got in 1750 the spire with the words pie in it of the Immaculate Virgin erected. Yeah, and that's the joke about the Immaculate Virgin that becomes God's mum. Yeah, and she is on the Capodimonte. Yeah, so she's a good mount, and she is allowed to get on top. And it's a massive joke. And in The Devil's Advocate, she has sex with the devil. And that is how the child is sired. And in The Christmas Gifts, she gets myrrh because it's an aphrodisiac, yeah, for a virgin. And she needs olive oil in the St. Andrew handicap joke. And a capon is a chicken. And all of it is into the same belly laugh. about denial that Jesus ever existed, which is actually the truth. Like the anti-Arian movement. Okay, 1759, and what we've got there is a Google Maps citation, so we could have a look at the proximity of all of these places in Naples. They're right next door to where the Rothschild opened the central bank. Yeah, they're right next door to where Archie Rosebery and Mrs. Plump Hannah Rosebery, who used to be a Rothschild and who used to be a Cohen from the high priests of Israel. All of it is a massive set of crimes. Okay, and we've got the holy relics jokes, the Palazzo Doria de Angri, and you've got, this is Naples, the kingdom now of two Sicilies, the home of the religious mafia for millennia already, and you now know who God's father was. That's the man Arius Calpurnius Piso that invented Jesus. And Doris keeps coming up in the Aegean stories, and I'm going to have to tell you that in a separate video because it's too complicated. 1779, two more theatres. 1790, San Ferdinando, all the ABBA music and the titles. Real Fondo di Separazione, Parthenon Opian Republic, and the Army of Naples is formed. This is the church now, militarising itself. 1799, 1804, and you've got revolutions, and you've got the church's army fighting against the revolutionaries, like I think it's Mazzini, people like that. Real Bibliothèque de Napoli opens. That's the Bible library. Do you see it? Okay, now wait for it, because we've told you that even today Naples is a commune. In 1805 we have on the timeline the Anglo-Russian invasion, and what you've got in the real world today in 2015 is communist mafias that are actually capitalist figureheads. So this is the Vladimir Rothschilds, the Romanovs, with the Romanov as a middle name and Rothschild as a middle name. Yeah, and just before the familicide story comes out about the Russian Tsars in, I think it was 1813 or somewhere just leading up to the Waterloo fraud, yeah, the people were alleged to have murdered the Russian Tsars, and that was supposed to have been the Rothschilds, but the Rothschilds are actually the Romanovs under Vladimir Rothschilds, and they are, I forget what the first name for Romanov is, but it's a massive set of frauds, and he and the Rothschild networks are all over the cities of Auckland and Edinburgh in the empire of fraud that is Lothian Road. Yeah, and all of the law society cover-ups of all of the crimes of Lothian Road and the money laundering that goes out of there for all of the world's elites, and none of the ordinary people in any profession in the public sector or even in the private businesses like BP at Ineos in Grangemouth. They are treated like slaves, and it is a huge human tragedy. Then you get the Murrays coming in, and the word rat is entirely appropriate. Okay? So I've just been relegated. Yeah, when I mentioned the Murray and the legless David Murray and all of his holdings in Dunedin, yeah, for tax evasion reasons. And here we've got Giacomo Murat. Yeah, Murat is the new king of Naples. He promotes administrative reforms in 1808 and public works. Yeah, this is the launch of the underground and the tram networks like David Murray and the SNP and the previous Labour government introduced into Scotland. Yeah, and all of the frauds that involved my mate David Steele, and all of the people that are the McConnells of Monaco, yeah, that are the first people to give the governance of the building that is the Scottish Parliament. It's going to have to be rebuilt within 10 years because it's decrepit. Yeah, all of it is a tragedy. Yeah, so this is the Murrays of Dunblane, and that is the Dunblane region where the Antonine Wall runs through, and that is the Nerva Antoninus secret society. That is where the Piso family got their power base as they sent Christianity east and west and tried to keep the federations out of Rome. And the federations are the massive warmongering states all around them, like the Goths, the Visigoths, yeah, and the Frankish armies that are capable of beating the Romans because they're so far from home and there's no way that they can feed themselves. Okay, Napoleon grants the kingdom of Naples to his brother Joseph, so there's another new start. Okay, and this will be Napoleon Bonaparte, will it? Because we're getting close to 1815 and he's sweeping across Europe raising funds from the Rothschilds for all sides, yeah, and all of it is a total stitch up. And then they get, at the end of the operation, as we approach the launch of everybody losing their central banks, they get a shrubbery like the Rothschilds are awarded for every conflict globally or all across Europe, or every revolution like the Napoleonic one that we're discussing here. They get massive rewards, and the wood joke in the shrubbery is the Christian cross, and you've got the zoo so that the whole of the Piso menagerie can be put in there, like you've got in Barcelona where Hitler was the gardener at Montserrat with the word rat in it, Abbey. Okay, 1815. Naples is against the Austrian Empire. The intervention by Austria caused resentment in Italy, which further spurred on the drive towards Italian unification. 1816, the city becomes the capital kingdom of the two Sicilies. So the mafia's in Sicily, allegedly, and now you've got an onshore. It's like Delaware in America. L'Ortas, that's another shrubbery. That's the horticulture sector. Camaldalensis de Napoli established, another garden. Okay, and you've got the shrubbery. This is Napoleon's Elba, is not very far away, by the way, and it's an easy trip for all of these elites to Monaco for the weekend. Okay, and you've got the concept that very soon they'll be making their junkets in Florida. Okay, the Castros are right next door in Cuba, and all of it is in the fucking Godfather film, and all of it is part of the brutalization on 9/11 of the concept that Islam was innocent, yeah, and was invited to visit places like Cambridge, yeah, that's Bin Laden, all of a sudden in 2001 when they bring down those twin towers. The Florida Air Base that was Tyndall Air Base is part of the monarchy involvement in that. That's Prince Andrew, that's Fergie, the little red doll on the 101st floor, and all of it is shameful. And all of it is done by coercion, by keeping their sexual secrets, by keeping everything that they've done long ago, and all of the world leaders do, which is why they are picked. If they could come together and just say that we are prepared now to make a sacrifice for our country, and we are going to expose the people that have compromised us thus far, then those people would likely be executed in the course of time. Yeah, but you need to keep your eye on the judiciary if that happens, because they're a massive part of the fraud team. Okay, 1821, the flag of Naples is now endorsed as red and yellow, revolutionary red and fascist and cowardly yellow for the Rothschilds. Right then, and the population by now is 450,000, and I think that could be, oh no, or we've got the earthquakes. So in 1866 the Naples Central Railway Station was built, and I believe that would be above ground, because the elf joke is that is the electric railways, and the first place that I learned that was in Chicago, in the joke that is the fugitive film. Yet when you see all the electric trains travelling to and fro, that's why the policemen, when they're looking for their suspects, they say that you can hear the elf in the background, and that is the same joke as the elves, the goblins, the goblets, and the Holy Grail is the goblet and that's the goblin on every church roof parapet. Yet the Holy Grail is not something that cannot be found. It's on every church roof across our globe. And most of those are made from stone, because God hates the Christianity concept. Yeah, and that's why you need a stone-proof roof. Yeah, it's absolutely massive, and they understand it entirely, and they think it's really funny until they contract the pathology or they lose both the legs. Right then, earthquake reported in 1872 during Mary Somerville née Fairfax's stay in town, buried in an English cemetery. See tab, this is the English cemetery in frickin' Naples. See tab, this was not on the Wikipedia list in this timeline. I had to find it out by spending 20 or so minutes for looking why this earthquake that was reported elsewhere occurred in Naples. So 1872 history needs a glance. From another site, one gets warmer, which often happens under Vesuvius. 1870, the Second Vatican Council proclaims the infallibility of the human Pope. So we've displaced God already. So in 1870, 2 years before the quake, you've got a man called Pius, with the word pi in his name, declaring that the Second Vatican Council, not necessarily him of his own, a Batman, yeah, the infallibility of the Pope, which is him, the Piso family member. Okay, Pius the IX was known as Pope and King, yeah, and had a papal, that's Königsberg, yeah, the Königsberg Asset Park is the In Bruges assassination movie, and all of it is an interlocked set of jokes about globalism and the assassination bureaus that it takes to run the world this way. Okay. And the availability of guns in this day and age is an abomination. Yeah, I'm tempted to go and spend my last few years in America and take on the freedom issues there, but the gun issues are horrendous. Okay, Pius IX was known as Pope and King and had a papal army to fight the commies. Okay, he also deregulated papal finance and handed it to the lay people. Yeah, that is the banks, the Polo banks, I forget what the name of the banks were that we tracked into London in the earlier video. Santa Polo. Even Jews and Protestants who were buried after witnessing the quake. See Villa Pignatelli and Rothschild banquets. So this is a special, it's a special burial ground that's been built in Naples. Okay, sorry, the lay people who run the finance for him are actually the Rothschilds, and they live in the Villa Pignatelli. Yeah, and they also are friends of Pamplona. Yeah, they're actually close cousins. Yeah, and Pamplona is married to the Scotsman that owned the Villa Rosebery, overlooking the Bay of Naples, and all of these things are in exactly the same region. And you've got the defectors from Scotland and the Fairfaxes, that was our maiden name, yeah, and all of those are entrepreneurial presences, and all of them Yeah, there's a massive list of Irish people on that. It's the English cemetery post there. Let's get to the bottom of the timeline and we'll open that if we've got time. I'd like to show you the Lady Di princess story. Okay, he looks jolly and the Protestants liked him. Yeah, so he's a profiteer. He's got the pious label that tells you he's one of the Piso plot, and he's friends with English and Irish people that are buried in his own crime scene. And that's why the volcano quaked a bit. Yeah, sorry, it was an earthquake in this case. Okay, we've got more in the Piss Artistry sector. 1882, Filangier Museum opens. Galleria Principe di Napoli is built in 1883. Okay, all of it art treasures all across the walls. 1884, in response, God gives them a cholera epidemic. 1 year later is proclaimed the big restoration, the Renaissance, the city of culture concept. And you've got quite a vicious joke that makes your eyes water in 1890. Circumvesuviana founded, and this is the launch of the underground electric tramways, the ELF. Okay, and it's underground in Halles, like the underground in France that is the subway. Okay, and the same joke is used in the ELF in the Fugitive movie. Okay, and what you've got is the foreskin is the Circumvesuviana, and the foreskin is the tip of the Vulcan's penis jokes. That's the volcanoes. The volcanoes eruption zone has no foreskin. Yeah, it's got a flat top and it's a